Welcome back. This video is going to drill down and improve our knowledge about specifics of making business rules. And instead of me making a bunch of business rules and stumbling around, what we're going to use as our teaching device is business rules that already exist in Sun Plus version 6. I think it's useful. First off, we'll cover a lot more business rules, but also you'll be able to learn a little bit more about the rules that are existing. The event driving the business rule that we're looking at on the screen here is the ledger entry end of line. Whenever you push a new line, this rule fires off, and the writer of this rule wrote a little note here. It doesn't apply to ledger import, only to ledger entry. Now what I'm going to do is stop the camera for a second and change its focus. I wanted you to see where we were. We're in this business rule, and if you have version 6, you might want to just open it up and look at it while we go along. Don't touch it, don't break it, but you can take a peek at it. But then we're going to focus on down here, and so what I thought we would do is change the focus of the camera so these could be larger. So I wanted you to see where we are, and then we're going to zoom in just to this section down below. We have focused on just the bottom of the rule set down here where the action is. This is a rule set in that each of the rules relate to each other. You might look at a column as being a rule. All of the related rules are in the same rule set. And one way to look at it is that each of the options in a situation, each of the alternatives in a broader situation are being dealt with. This is an overall business rule. Following the naming structure or the nomenclature of N4 and Sun systems, each of these rows are called a statement. There are two types of statements. Condition statements, they start with an if or an or, and they define what conditions and what is the situation in which the rule is applied. And then the action statements are everything that are not if or, and they define what action is to be taken. So the if or statements, the condition statements define when the action is supposed to happen. The condition is when, the action is what do we do. Another way to tell action statements from condition statements are condition statements, if or statements, all have a Y and N connected to them. We'll talk more about those in a minute. And the action statements all have an X. Following this rule down, if this is true, and this is true, and this is not true, then do this. That's the logic. If this is true, and this is true, and this is not true, and this is true, then do this and this. That's the logic of this rule. Today, at least the first part of this video, is to focus on condition statements. I think it will take a whole video just to cover the possibilities in condition statements. In a condition statement, there are three parts. There's this if or over here, just following logic. This value, this is a relational operator in relation to this value. So in this case here, if the account code is less than 201, this would be if the account code is greater than 208, then we have these logical tests to see if the condition is met or not met to define our business rule. Now, the first thing we want to observe is the relationship between if statements and or statements. This is the logic here. So we're focusing right now on these first two rows. This is saying if the first three positions of the account code is less than 201, and you can see the Y there. Notice there's not a Y. There's nothing in this row for this condition statement. That Y is applying to both the if and the or. This is saying if account code is less than 201, or if the account code is greater than 208, this Y is picking up both rows there of these statements. So if it is less than 201 or greater than 208, go down this column here. So let's look at this one. If the ledger is equal to B, no, or if the business unit is ACN or ADN or ATN, we don't need to understand this component completely, but we need to know that that N applies to the if row and all of its following R rows. So if any of these things are true, the budget ledger is B, or the business unit is ACN, or the business unit is ADN, or the business unit is ATN. No, got to keep your wits about you. This is basically saying if it is A or something other than these, go down this row here. Our discussion now is focusing on what are the options under operators. Equal to, greater than or less than, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, plus, period, divided by, mathematical types of processes that we could put into an operator. I've never gone into the mathematical equal to 10% of this value or that value, but I presume that we could put in if the entry is less than 10% of such so-and-so figure, do so-and-so. You could do a mathematical formula. I'm pretty happy with equal to, greater than, less than, equal to and greater than, equal to and less than, instead of getting the mathematical operators, but they are there. Then over here in values, values can have, let's say, 4 different possible things. The first is that they could be a literal value. In this case is a good example in the first row. This is greater than 201. The first 3 digits are greater than 201. So that would be just a straight number. Is it 201 or not? The second thing it can have is a mask value. Mask, M-A-S-K-E-D, mask value. A mask value throws in placeholders, and so let's see if we can't get a mask value here for us to look at. A mask value could look like something like this. You use the asterisk as a placeholder, so this would say this greater than 201 asterisk 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 is essentially replacing the need for having position 1 to 3. If it starts with 201, no matter what comes after, and you can put some intelligence to this, we could do a mask value that looked like this. If in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th positions you have the number 201, no matter what happens after or what happens before in the 1st and 2nd position, that rule will apply. So there's some room for creativity here. 1st, 2nd doesn't matter. 3rd, 4th, and 5th will be 201, and then what comes after it doesn't matter. Then we're using a masked value. Now, there's also the beautiful thing, a very powerful thing, and there are 4 possible keywords that can be put into play there. Here we could see one keyword working. If asset code is equal to space, that is not saying if the asset code has the name SPACE, it is saying if asset code, and this is a ledger entry business rule, so if asset code is blank, then that would mean go down this row here. So if the operator, the accountant, has not put in the asset code, then it comes into play. So that's the word space. You can also use the word zero. So zero is different than space. If the value that has been entered is the zero value, then we'll return a value. I don't see the use of it too much, but if someone has entered 0 and the field has a 0 in it, so this rule that you see right here would say if the account code position 1 to 3 is 0, then we will have that as our business rule, as our condition. And it can also be the word numeric, to be used if there is a numeric value been entered into that field. If account code has had a numeric value entered, then that would be good or bad depending on the situation where you were asking. So you could write a business rule that looked at whether numeric values had been entered or not. And of course, if put the word numeric there and we make the rule be no, that would be testing for someone who's put in an alphabetical entry. So let's say we wanted a test where the person entered the base amount and we want numeric, and so we'd write a business rule that would check to make sure that it is numeric, and we don't want alphabetical, alphabets entered in the base amount, and so we could write a business rule that says you've entered in letters into the base amount. It is supposed to to be just numbers. So those are the three of the keywords that are allowed to be used. Space, which checks for a blank space. Zero, which checks for a value of 0. And numeric, which checks for a numeric value, whether numbers have been entered into the field. There's one other keyword if you're trying to keep a list, and that is exist, the word EXISTS. We're not going to illustrate it now, but if you want to know all the keywords that are out there, those are the four that are out there: space, zero, numeric, and exist. Exist is used in a special situation which we're going to cover in another video. So those are the keywords that can be used in a conditional statement. So now let's follow down the conditional part of a few of these business rules. And you read them down. There is a logical connection crosswise, but the main focus needs to be in reading them down. So we're going to read them down to the point we have the action statement. We won't focus on the action statement until the next video. This one is just getting us down through all these ifs and ars. Is it less than 201 or greater than 208? That's over here. It's not us. So we skip that, and we're down here to if the first position is equal to or greater than 201 or less than or equal to 208, that is, it's between 201 and 208, yes, yes. And then we come down here, and if the asset code is space and the work in process, the account code starts with work in process no, then what I could just tell you what this is going to do, this is stop the processing and ask for an asset code. Okay, so let's just go real slow with it. The business rule says, is it an asset, 201 to 208? And have they not entered an asset code? And is it not work in process? Then stop the processing and require an asset code. Do not go to the next line. Is it an asset code? Is the asset code blank in the ledger entry? It's not work in process. Stop processing. Okay, let's do the same thing. You can see horizontal logic here. Is it an asset account? Have they entered an asset code? And this would mean they have, because it is not space. So there's something in there, and it is work in process. This message is saying, oh, you've entered an asset code and you shouldn't have. So this business rule is saying, don't enter an asset code when you're entering work in process. It is an asset account. There is an asset code has been entered. It is work in process. Don't enter asset code in work in process. Talk more about this in our next video. All we're doing is condition statements. We'll do this third one. This is less than 201. So this is account like account 100 or cash account or something of that sort. The start of the business unit code is the letter N. That would be just ADRA. NGO is what they use as their standard business code. So this is saying, is this an account less than, like a cash account? Is it less than 201? Yes, it is. Does it start with NGO? No, it doesn't. Okay, it is something other than ADRA. Is there something in the asset code field? You see, is it space? And no, it is not space, which means there must be something in there. And then it says, basically the business rule is changing the asset code to space. The accountant is putting in a cash entry. It's not NGO. They have tagged it with an asset code, which is wrong. It's going to change that asset code to X. You can see the value of this business rule. Let's do another one. This is an NGO. You see, it starts with an N, so it's an NGO type business unit. It is not the B ledger. It is account 962. It is not account 962999, and the asset code is space, and it's basically going to say an asset code. The asset code for this account is missing, so it's basically saying you've got to enter one. This has to do with the NGO setup. This is the NGO setup again, and so this is, yes, it is for NGO. No, it's not the budget ledger, and you can see that it is the account 962, and there is something entered in the asset code, and it is going to convert the asset code to 0. So if they've entered an asset code here, if they're doing that account and they've entered something, convert it to blank. That's what this is trying to say. We won't drill down on it real hard since I don't know exactly how the NGO is set up. It is an asset, and this column 6, rule 6, it is an asset account. It is a memo account. It is saying do not put an asset code on a memo account, and it tells you not to do it, and so those are the business rules, and those are conditional statements. Our next video will talk about the next type of statements down here, and these are the action statements. So the conditional statements apply logic, come up with a logical statement, and then decides whether it's to be applied or the reverse is to be applied, and then it takes you down to the point where you say yes, 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 or it could be no, 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 no. If everything is no, but then you apply, this is a condition where everything that is, you don't meet any of the conditions, so this is when you should do the action. So the logic works both ways. So you have to have your wits about you. If it were all yes down here, then it would be a little logical, but it would also be less powerful. So the condition statements decide when you should do the action statements. So the next video is all about action statements.